Good morning. I'm your host, Linda Whitaker. On today's Fact to Fiction, I write speculative and near future thrillers laced with science and technology, including the award-winning Georgia Steele thriller series. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today on From Fact to Fiction, where we unpack the truth behind my favorite specialty thrillers. Think Steve Barry, Kate Quinn, Douglas Preston. And while each of these works differ in specialty, from historical to medical to techno thriller, each immerses the reader in a new but realistic world. And the best of these blend fact with fiction so well, it's hard to tell the difference. You don't know what is, what could be, and what's totally impossible. It would take an expert to know. That's why each time we meet, I'll pair up with an expert. We'll select a new specialty thriller. We'll not only talk about why we love the book, but unpack the truth behind the fiction. Today, my book is a brand new to be released 2025 novel, Maiden Voyage by Brad Harper. Brand new historical thriller set in 1912. Three female thieves, a priceless painting, and a Pinkerton agent aboard the Titanic. What could go wrong? And our guest today is the author, Brad Harper. He has four novels, three of which are historical thrillers, including The Maiden Voyage and A Knife in the Fog. Welcome, Brad. Welcome to From Fact to Fiction.
Well, thank you very much for that intro. And you're comparing me to very, very excellent authors, so I'm flattered already.
Well, I love your books. Brad is such an interesting person. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel and pathologist with extensive experience in autopsies and forensic investigation, which I think gives him such a great eye for detail and medical accuracy. A lot of that is very relevant and obvious in his first book, A Knife in the Fog, which Arthur Conan Doyle is chasing down Jack the Ripper, right? He also has a unique ability to parlay college degrees into novels. And he plays Santa. I know you want to know more, so please watch for our Meet the Authors episode with Brad. But then back to our book, Maiden Voyage. We have a young jewel thief from Canada follows Mary Carr, the queen of the criminal gang, the 40 Elephants, aboard the Titanic to steal a painting by the French master Blondel. There she meets Harry Worth, a young Pinkerton agent hired to safeguard the wealthy passengers during the ship's maiden voyage. Harry, the son of a master criminal, IDs the pair, but his resolve falters after he meets the charming young thief. Will love, law, or tragedy prevail during the sinking of the largest object ever made? So Maiden Voyage will be released November 18th. And again, Brad, welcome to From Fact to Fiction.
All right, my great pleasure, and thank you again for the intro.
Thank
Writing
you.
that book was a labor of love. Uh, I'm a real history nerd, and I found the ship was interesting, but of course, all the lives that come together on that voyage, it was just fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, let us go back and now talk about the Maiden Voyage, your book that's coming out. So, the things that I loved about your book, first, I was happy that just for our readers, the focus is not on the Titanic sinking. For me, that was a good thing because it's kind of, it's grilling and depressing and horrific. And so it's not a focal point of the book, which is good. But I loved it because you had great characters and great twists that I didn't see coming. There's some great twists in there. And then I find out that many of your characters are based on real people, and that just makes it, even better, even better. Um, let's see, there was a quote in one of your reviews. This is for A Knife in the Fog, but I think it equally applies. Delightful chemistry, plummy prose, and believable period detail. And that was great. And then also for Maiden Voyage, another quote. Maiden Voyage by Bradley Harper is a perfect combination of Titanic fact and Titanic fiction. This book is guaranteed to grip the reader in suspense while attempting to figure out which characters are real, which characters are the result of an excellent creative mind and which characters are the result of an exceptional piece of historical research. And that is from Clifford Ismay, who I'm guessing is a direct descendant of J.
Yeah,
Bruce Ismay, who was the director of the White Star Line. Oops.
correct.
Yeah, so
Correct.
that's it's nothing like getting a nice compliment from that's pretty cool. Pretty great. Pretty great. So we're going to jump right in now into the facts behind the fiction. Um, you, I loved that you took a lot of historical facts in terms of people, objects, and incidents, and then you put them together in fictitious ways to tell a great story. So let's start with the people, if that's shall we? Our characters, our main character, or one of them, is Harry Worth, who's a Pinkerton agent with a gangster father. Can you tell us a little about Harry and his father, Adam Worth?
Yeah, yeah. Harry Worth is a very interesting guy. His father, Adam Worth, was a consulting criminal, just like Professor Moriarty. He would plan heists. His specialty was bank heists, and then he would get 15% of the take. He was so successful. He put the lie to crime doesn't pay. He had a mansion. He had a steam yacht. He had He had a stable of racing horses. I mean, he was really living a very good life. He was a German American. Uh, he was drafted in the Union Army during the Civil War and was wounded at the Second Battle of Bull Run. And when he recovered, he found out that he'd been declared dead. So he started enlisting in Union regiments, and you would get $1,000 for enlisting, which was a huge amount of money in those days. And then as soon as he got his payment, he'd desert and enlist in another regiment. And he made quite a small fortune doing that during the war. And then afterwards, started as a pickpocket, and then bank robberies, and ultimately started planning them himself. He one bank heist. He tunneled into the vault of a bank in Boston, which makes me think of the Sherlock Holmes story, the Red-Headed League, where the pawnbrokers are being kept busy copying from the Encyclopedia Britannica while his assistant is tunneling, in the basement. So anyway, he got all this money from the bank heist and fled to England. The Pinkertons in hot pursuit, but he came to England, changed his name, and became quite prosperous. Most of the famous criminals in Europe sooner or later would visit him and plan out some heist. Late in life, he got involved in a bank job where he got personally involved to try to get a friend of his out of prison, and was caught. Got out of prison late in life. He was in poor health, and so he had a painting that he'd stolen years ago that the Pinkertons had a long-standing contract to recover. So he contacted William Pinkerton, the head of the agency, and said, I'll let you have the painting for $25,000, an agreement that I not be prosecuted for the theft. And when my son comes of age, I want you to make him a Pinkerton agent because I don't want him to follow me into a life of crime. William Pinkerton respected Adam Worth because although he was a criminal, he had a code of honor. He never harmed anyone in the commission of his crimes. Worth said if a man had a set of brains, he could, perform his theft without harming anybody. And so Pinkerton agreed to that. In fact, Pinkerton and Conan Doyle were on a transatlantic crossing together, and being two notable men, they had dinner, and Pinkerton told Doyle about Adam Worth, and that inspired the creation of a consulting criminal. He had a consulting detective, so why not a consulting
Yeah.
criminal? And
Oh my
so
gosh, I
that was
love
the
it.
birth of Professor Moriarty.
Wow, wow. Um, wow, that's great. Um, okay, next I want to talk about the women. And we had a criminal gang called the 40 Elephants, run by a woman named Mary Carr. I was so delighted to find out that was real. Was it really a group? I know there was a group of criminals. Were they really mostly women or all women? And can
They
you
were
talk,
yeah.
yes? Can you also talk about
Go
that
ahead.
for listeners out and also their hoisters code, their unusual code of conduct.
Oh, you very, very much. Yeah, yeah. They existed from 1780 to 1953. They began as an auxiliary of a group of highwaymen, men who, highwaymen rob people on the road. They started off, as confidence ladies, pickpockets. Uh, their heyday was when department stores first began, and they started hoisting things from department stores. In fact, Harrods and Selfridges were their two favorite stores to go through. Shortly after about 10 or 15 years of being auxiliary, they said, okay, we're all women. They would occasionally work with a man for a particular job, but to be a member of the 40 Elephants, it was women only, girls only, boys not allowed.
Wow.
And so the Hoisters Code was one thing is you couldn't be drunk or hungover when you were on a job. Uh, let's see what else. You couldn't marry a man who was not a criminal himself because then they were seen as a potential snitch to the police.
Mm.
You couldn't wear anything that you've stolen because that could be that linked you to the theft. Those were all things, and then of course you never informed on anybody else. And in return for that, they all 15% of the take went into a fund Mary Carr administered. So when somebody got pinched, she would hire a barrister to defend them. And in general, they spent far less time in jail than their counterparts who were not in the gang because they didn't have legal representation.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Awesome.
and if a person was incarcerated, the fund was also used would pay their rent so that they could come back to a place when they were done, and it would care for the family if they had one to sustain them until they did their time. That was another way of making sure that they didn't rat out on other people uh, to shorten their own time in jail.
Wow, smart and profitable. I love it. It's great. Okay, well, that let's go to the Titanic. I think objects and incidents. The first thing when I was reading, it sounded like a wild time. High stakes gambling and mothers stalking single men for their daughters, which seems, like some of the rules of society they kept, especially kind of the class, they were very the elitists and classism. But these other ones, were basically they're just stalking men relentlessly. That was just wild. And I want to know if that's true, if that actually happened, or if that
Oh,
is from your imagination.
oh no, it's very true. I read the memoir of Violet Jessup,
Oh,
a stewardess that I portray, and that was an eligible young man who could afford a first class ticket aboard a White Star
mhm.
ship was seen by the mothers of unmarried daughters as a prime target, and so it was not uncommon at all for them to try to engineer shipboard romances that would lead to marriage. A woman, if a woman of a certain class, if she was 24 years old and still not married or engaged, that was considered almost shameful, and so yeah, they were seen as spinsters at 24 years of age if they weren't married by that time, and so it was the social pressure on women was just incredible. A woman had to wear a different outfit 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they could spend 45 minutes or so putting on all the layers and the gloves. Gloves, it could take you like 3 minutes to put on one pair of gloves, the little button hooks that put on there, and you could only wear them the one time. That's where the term steamer trunk came into effect. You needed these huge trunks to be able to hold all the clothing a woman was expected to wear during the duration of a 7 day journey. You could wear the same clothes the night that it arrived, the night the ship departed the harbor, and the night before it came into harbor because of all the packing. But other than that, you had to be constantly changing clothes, and um, And of course, you had these enormous course meals. And I make mention that the women would spend an hour or more a day walking around the ship to make sure that they didn't have to loosen their corset before the cruise was over because of all the food they would eat in the course of these elaborate meals.
That is just crazy. That's so silly. Amazing. It's
Yeah, the
great.
man has a tuxedo, and or as they refer to it, a smoking jacket, and he's good for the duration.
All time. Yeah. Well, my next question is also the activity on the ship. Did thieves and card sharks and gamblers target the transatlantic ships like in your novel? So did companies like the White Star, did they do anything to try to protect passengers from these thieves or warn them or anything like that?
Yes, there were. I quote from a brochure that passengers got the morning after the ship set sail, warning them about professional gamblers that would frequent the ships because you had wealthy people
Yep.
with a lot of time in their hands, drinking a lot of alcohol, and at ease because they're among their social equals. And so their guards would be down. And so it was a perfect time for confidence men and gamblers to take advantage of them and try to make some money. So in Alec again, Violet Jessup, she makes mention of what she called boatmen,
Mm.
and these were male, all men, professional gamblers who would frequent the transatlantic crossings because again, people were sequestered for the week of the journey, and it was a great time. And they had card games, um, except on Sundays. Sundays there was no card playing in public, but people could do it in their rooms, whatever they wanted. So yeah, that was quite true.
I love that. I remember the brochure, but who knew it was real? That's wonderful. Wow, wonderful. What a hidden gem. All right. Let's see. Our thieves plan to steal a painting traveling on the Titanic, and I think that's revealed pretty early in your book. They're after that Blondell
Mhm.
painting. And then we also have later on they learn about another high value item, and both are actual items on the Titanic that were lost. And Kier, would you like to tell us a little bit about them? Maybe about the painting that is one of the inspirations for your book.
Yeah, the painting by Blondell was the single most valuable personal item that was lost on the sinking, and the claim afterwards, what the owner claimed, they got the largest settlement from the settlement fund in regard to the sinking. Um, I use a different owner because the owner was actually Swedish, and his long name was just too much. I didn't want to keep writing that name over and over and over again, so I changed the name slightly, and then I also gave the owner a personal connection to Mary Carr, so there's a little bit of revenge uh,
And
as
stuff.
well. She mixes her business with her pleasure. Uh,
Lastly, many books written about the Titanic. And so we could spend hours talking about the boat and the sinking and all of that. But if you had to pick one thing relevant to your book that you'd like our readers to know about the how, where, or why the Titanic went down, what would it be?
a lot of people malign the captain, Captain Smith, and he was the most senior captain in the White Star Line. He was going to retire, and they said, "Could you please do the maiden voyage for the Titanic, and then you could retire, and that could be like the jewel in the crown of your career." And the crew really admired him. He was a very beloved figure. He was a kind of benevolent dictator, and people criticized him for the speed at which he went through the ice field. To his credit, he was advised of the ice field, and he went further south trying to avoid that, which was probably prudent. but unfortunately, it took them off the major line, major route, and
Mm.
so there were fewer ships around as a result of that deviation. Um, but there was other thing that he did. People criticized, the lifeboats were not full when they went down. Part of the problem was they had the design for the davits, the arms that hold that support the lifeboat that's going down. It was a new design, and the officers were not comfortable that the davits and the ship and the boats could support the weight of all those people being suspended in the air going down. And so Captain Smith gave the order for the boats then to come around to the second class boarding area and take on additional passengers. A stoker, excuse me, a boatswain and
Mm.
six stokers went down to open that hatch. Well, none of the lifeboats went around to take on more passengers, and the boatswain and the stokers were never seen again. But when they found the wreck, I have a picture that
Mm.
I respect that affects me emotionally. The door was open.
Mm.
The men went down there and they fulfilled that final order,
Mm.
though they were never seen again. And sadly, no one else was able to be saved from those that were. But that was but the memoir by Violet Jessup was just a great gold mine for me to what it was like to be a crew member aboard the
Mm.
ship.
Mhm. Wow. Well, maybe we will put that, if you'll send me a link to that, we can put that in the transcript too. That might be, people might be interested in that if it's in her.
Sure, I can
Yeah,
do that.
that would be interesting, I think. Usually at the end of this, we say, well, is it fact or is it fiction? I think you've got so clearly, yeah, all of so much fact within your book. It's so rich in history, and really appreciate the effort that you went to in researching this and creating this book. And it's really wonderful. And I
Well,
can't
well,
wait
thank
for
you.
everybody else to have access to it. So,
Well, I highly recommend the museum, the Titanic Museum in Belfast. Um, One of the things that impressed me was they have a ride inside the museum. You get on, and it's like you're going through the framework of the ship while it's being constructed, and you hear the men talking back and forth, and you learn a little bit of what that was like. And really was the Britannic, the first in that line. No, the Olympic was the first of that line. Well, the Titanic was even larger, not a whole lot, but even so, when it set sail, it was the largest moving object ever made.
mhm.
So
Wow.
you can imagine why people felt so secure. And one of the problems of getting people on board the lifeboats was that this is unsinkable. What are you talking about? We'll be fine.
Anyway, all right. Well, thank you so much today. I want to remind our listeners and viewers to go grab a pre-order of Maiden Voyage so you don't forget. And I'd recommend grab a knife in the fog while you're waiting to read Maiden Voyage because it's so wonderful.
Thank you
And
very
I
much.
saw on your website, I hope you don't mind me saying this, that you said that if people have a book club, that you may be able to Zoom in and to have the moderator of the book clubs contact you via your website, which
Hmm.
is bharperauthor.com, and we'll give links to that. So I'm volunteering you.
Thank you.
And so thank you, Brad, so much. Thank you for our readers and listeners. Appreciate you coming very much. And we'll see our everyone on the next episode of From Fact to Fiction.